mean, I think it's an impossible question to answer straight now. This is the innovation that did it, unless you wanted to say, I guess, that Pong did it because they did it first in a commercial setting. But for me personally, probably wandering down to my local bowling alley and putting 20 cents into an elevator action machine. That was a big moment. Moving on a little bit, perhaps realising that arcades were seriously in trouble when you could play Street Fighter 2 on a SNES. I think that one hit quite a few people. As you said, Mario 64 I think was a big innovation. But yeah, I think you can't really talk about a single split point innovation. I think you talk about an evolution of timeline.
I'll throw out one random one that doesn't get much attention. And yeah, maybe a lot of people might disagree. But Wonder Boy, for me, was one of those arcade games where I think it's the first time where I'm like, you can go into a shop and buy things, and you can get do things better. And
is that Wonder Boy in Monster World you're talking about?
Yeah.
I love that game.
It was just awesome.
Yeah, not the skateboarding one.
There's not enough love for original Wonder Boy.
Any other questions? Yeah, cool.
Hi there. One thing I was wondering is, I know in Australia basically we don't get the Xbox indie games. I believe that's because they have to be rated to be released here, and they're generally expected they wouldn't sell enough copies to cover the cost of having them rated. I've heard talk of them wanting to start rating all of the apps on the iPod, iPhone. Do you think that's going to kill the indie scene? It's like the fastest growing scene out there. There's so many new games coming out daily. But if they bring in basically this barrier and you have to pay several $1,000s to just release the game and get it rated, you think most people won't bother?
It's a question for you.
Why is everyone looking at me? Look, it's an interesting thing. Look, it's really detailed. It's really deep. When I started at the OFLC on the classification board, we had Counter-Strike came in. And the guys who managing the applications for us said, it's only online, you don't classify it, it's looked after under the broadcasting service, exactly a different scheme. So we told the applicant, send it back. And I said, this is stupid, it's a bloody game. If we're going to classify Half-Life, we should classify Counter-Strike. It's easy enough. And it comes in a disc, you go into the shop and buy it, consumers expect it. So, anyway, no, the lawyers told me no. So I went outside our lawyers to our head agency, as the Attorney General's Department, their lawyers said no. So, fine. So 7 years I kept asking the question, it was like, no. And that's what we told industry, that's what I told industry as the Deputy CEO of that organisation, that's what the lawyers told me to tell our industry in Australia. 12 months after I left, a journalist asked the question of New South Wales Attorney General's Department, what about online games? Yeah, they've got to be classified. Alright, because the states do enforcement and the Commonwealth does the classification. So they went to the Commonwealth Attorney General's Department, what about online games? They need to be classified. Yeah, they do. So then the industry goes, what? WTF is everywhere. And it was like, okay, that's fair enough. And now we've seen World of Warcraft, we've got the Blizzard just got it classified just to cover their bases. And it's been out there 5 years now before it was classified. And you talk about mobile apps like your iPhone apps. How many apps are there in the Apple Store? 80,000? Whatever it is. 150,000. How many of them games, how many of them films, I don't know. Should they all be classified, or should they just meet the rules under the online, because they're distributed online for the purposes of the legislation. They have to comply with some rules, like you can't have certain stuff. You don't have to get it classified, you just have to comply with some rules. And most of the mobile and online content industry just follow those rules and it's okay.
Are those Apple's rules?
No, Apple has its own rules. These are legislative rules in Australia, under broadcasting services, under ACMA, which is under Department of Broadband and all that sort of stuff, which is under Conroy, who you all know. So, look, it's not as bad as everyone thinks. Then what happened last year, I think it was, the current director of the classification board said to Senate every year that senior public servants have to go before the Senate and answer budget questions, which they don't talk about the budget, they talk about everything else. And basically, he said, I'm really worried about all this stuff on iPhone, so we're going to classify it. And yeah, sure. The classification board in a good year does about 7,000 or 8,000 things. So next year they're going to do another 80,000. That's a really good idea. I think you're right. I think it will kill it. I think it's a ridiculous thing. There's a system in place that looks after it without having to classify first. It's about common sense. Most of the businesses, from a business perspective, don't put yucky stuff out to everyone. If you want yucky stuff, you have to find it, and you might get a little legally. That's different. But a platform like Apple Store isn't going to sell dodgy stuff. Every time something comes up, so they complain, they'll whip it. That's sensible. Xbox Live, same thing. You look on Xbox Live, I'm not knocking Xbox or a PlayStation Store or anything. They have to struggle with what needs to be classified and what doesn't every single day. And that's because those two government departments, Attorney General Department, Department of Broadband and all that, they're saying these are the rules. And they don't, either they overlap or there's a gap. And we're the poor ears who have to live with it because they won't talk to each other to sort it out. And because they don't know, they don't understand. Sorry, I'm getting a bit upset. But it's just that it's not because they're being stupid. They're not trying to make stupid decisions and rules. It's just they don't know and they're not willing to listen to anyone. And to me, if you break the law, then the court will tell you ignorance is no excuse. So my advice to the Australian government is ignorance is no excuse.
Please report to the level 3 admissions desk. It's getting urgent. Please collect your children, Brody and Neva. Mr. Tony Smith
Any
to
other
the level 3
questions?
admissions desk. It's becoming urgent. Thank you.
Sorry, I'll get this.
So that was the 3-minute version. I could talk about it for about 10 hours.